I want to do a quick thing about multiple zeros, repeated zeros, and then I'm going to switch to going to Delta Math and showing you just different types of questions that you should be able to complete. So a multiple zero means that it's a zero that occurs more than once. So for example, if you had something like x plus 5 twice, and the way I would indicate that that factor was there twice would be by putting an exponent of 2. What that means is your zero, which is -5, would be called a multiple zero or have a multiplicity of 2, meaning that it shows up twice. If you have something like this, if you have a factor that's like x minus 3 cubed, we would say because that is cubed, that is also repeated zero, and it's repeated 3 times. So let's talk about what this looks like. And I kind of indicated a little bit in the last video. If a zero is only there one time, so if you just have something like x minus 4, and it doesn't have an exponent, that is a single zero. What that means is at 4, the solution, it would cross right through the x-axis. However, if it's a repeated solution, it doesn't cross through the axis there. Instead, it just touches the axis. So for an example, -5. If -5 is a repeated zero that repeats twice, and I put a point on -5, this graph would touch the axis at -5, but wouldn't go through the axis at -5. So it would almost like bounce off of it. That is what it's going to look like anytime it's a repeated zero where it's repeated twice. If it's once, let me kind of give you a picture for each one. So this one, 4 is a single solution. So what that means is your graph is actually going to go through the x-axis at 4. So it's not going to bounce off of it, it's going to go through it. If it's there twice, it's going to bounce off of it. If it's a repeated 3 times, which is not very common, so I don't want you to think you're going to see this a lot. If it's repeated 3 times, instead of going right through the graph, or instead of bouncing off of it, it kind of like lays on top of the graph, which is a strange way to explain it, but it almost like merges into the axis for a little bit and then goes back up. Not very common at all, but you will see a lot of the ones that go right through the axis, meaning they're there one time, bounce off the axis, which means it's a double solution or existing twice, or laying on the axis, which means it's there 3 times. So I wanted to go do some Delta Math and just kind of take you through some problems so you're comfortable with what I'm going to ask you to do. So I'm going to ask you to select equation from the graphing root. So I'm going to go to this one. So these are going to be matching multiple choice. They're going to be really quick. So if I look at this, I can tell that my graph goes through the axis at -7, at 0, and at 6. So I'm looking for something that has a factor of x plus 7, a factor of just x, because 0 is a solution, and a factor of x minus 6, since 6 is a solution. So I'm going to look at all of them, see which one matches up. So I need an x, which they all have. I need an x minus 6, which the first one and the last one have, and I need an x plus 7. So that's going to happen for that one, and I'm going to submit it. I'll show you one more of those, and then we're going to look at some other things that could be asked. I want to see if I can find a repeated one. Let me see if I can find a repeated one. Maybe not. No. Most of these must be single solutions. Yeah, these are pretty quick. You will have ones that are really fast, like this is a parabola. It only goes through -3 and 6, so you're only looking for something that has an x plus 3 and an x minus 6. X plus 3 and x minus 6. That's that one. So these are going pretty fast. I don't think there are any that we have to worry about repeated. Okay, let's go to another section here. So you will also be determining the features of a graph. I want to spend a little more time on this. So you're going to have something like this. Oh, this is a good one. And it's going to ask you to fill in different things that we know about the graph. So here's what we've got. We've got a graph that goes through the x-axis back here in the left, and then it just touches the x-axis, and then it goes through again. And it's going to ask you a lot of questions about this graph. So first it's going to ask about the degree. The key for the degree is to look at the end behavior. If the degree is going in the same direction, so like up in both directions or down in both directions, we know that it's even. If the end behavior, one side goes up and the other side goes down, we know that it is odd. So that's what it wants to know. Is it even versus odd? Again, even will have that look kind of like a parabola where both ends go the same direction. Odd will be the opposite direction. So this one is definitely even. The other thing I know is the leading coefficient. Since it's going up in both directions, the leading coefficient must be positive. If it was going down in both directions, the leading coefficient would be negative. How many zeros does it have? So we're going to count how many times it crosses or touches the axis. We do not need to count one that repeats more than once. So right now we have 1, 2, 3 places where it crosses or touches the x-axis. And then it wants to know about maximums. So maximums are any peak, minimums are any valleys. So this one has a maximum. I'm going to kind of circle it here. So give me 1 second to change my screen. It has a maximum here, very subtle. And that's it. This is a minimum. That's a low point. This is a minimum. That's a low point. So we have a single maximum. And they'll put pictures on there. They'll like draw different things. They even showed like that one place that's a repeated, that it also is a maximum. So they kind of double circled it. And they'll kind of give you all that information. These take a little getting used to. So I want to show you a couple. So this one, we talked about it kind of laying on the axis. You kind of see that happening here, that repeated zero. First thing y'all notice is my end behavior. The left side of the graph is heading downwards. The right side of the graph is heading upwards, which tells me this has to be an odd graph. My leading coefficient, since it's heading down on the left and up on the right, that is a positive leading coefficient. If you're not sure, you can always grab your calculator and just grab a really simple odd one, graph like x to the third, or you can actually just graph x and see what happens on the ends. Positive will go down on left side, up on the right, negative will do the opposite. So this is a positive leading coefficient. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 places where it crosses or touches the x-axis. I'm going to start marking this up a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So we've got one place here where it crosses or touches. We have one place here. We have one place here. We have one place here. So we have 4 real zeros. Minimums. So I'm looking for any valley. So this is going to be a minimum right here because that's a low part of my graph. Think of like you're riding the roller coaster, and this is going to be a minimum. So it looks like I have 2 minimums. So let me type that in. So I've got 4 zeros. I've got 2 minimums. Awesome. And again, they show you the picture. I love that they show this picture so you can kind of see. I'm going to do one more with you. See if I can find one that's negative, just so you get to see that. All right, we'll do this one. So this one is the end behavior is doing opposite things. It's going up on the left. It's going down on the right. So this is definitely odd. Unlike the last one we did, this one is going up on the left side and down on the right, which means it must start out negative for that to happen. It crosses or touches the x-axis. Let me find all the spots. So here, 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 and here. So 4 times. This one wants to know how many extreme values. So I'm glad we're doing this one. Extreme value means any maximum or any minimum. So I'm going to put them in red here. So here's a minimum. Here's a maximum. Here's a minimum, also happens to be when it touches the x-axis. Here's a maximum. So we actually have 4 extreme values in addition to having 4 zeros. So let's type those in and see the notation that they put. So again, they mark it up. It's so great to mark it up, even if you're just kind of using your finger and tapping your screen to kind of see those. So that's what you're being asked to do in this set of problems.